So it's come to my attention that there's an ongoing debate about what's more important, offense or defense. If you've been playing basketball before 2020, you would probably hear your coach, parent, sibling, or whoever was teaching you how to play the game, that defense wins championships. The phrase has been around forever now, and it's one that many basketball players live by. Actually, it's not even basketball players. Even NBA GMs who believe this phrase so much to the point where they traded one of the best players in the NBA. Recently, Kevin Durant has chimed in on this debate, stating that he believes that it's the other way around. He believes offense wins championships, and he's been pretty adamant about it. So the question is he catching onto something about the modern game, or is he just full of it? Well, firstly, I think it's important to look at how both sides of the coin function, because they're two very different things. In my opinion, offense is based off of skill work. It's much more technical than defense. If you want to work on your offense, you would walk into a gym and either start shooting or dribbling the basketball. Shooting the ball requires you to perfect mechanics that will allow you to get your shot off in any situation, making sure that there is no wasted movement with your shooting. There's a technique to it to where you have to be precise. Any little error that you make can cause your jumper to be inconsistent. With ball handling, you have to get into an athletic stance and use your hand-eye coordination. You have to be able to dribble with both hands, dribble at different heights, manipulate the ball in different ways to keep the defender at bay. Any little mistake you make can cause you to lose your dribble, which can lead to a turnover. Notice how much attention to detail and drilling it takes to perfect your offensive game. Now, if we shift over to the other side of the coin, which is defense, it's much less about technique and skill and more about conditioning and athleticism. Think about it. Right now, if you wanted to become a better defender, what would you do? Would you walk into a gym and start working on defensive slides? Or start working on closeouts? No. Why? Because none of that stuff works. No one plays defense by sliding. You can't contain somebody by keeping your chest up and sliding when the person you're guarding is literally running to the basket. Physically, it's just not possible. And you'll notice that the best defenders in the world don't even follow quote-unquote defensive fundamentals. You'll see so many defenders cross their feet and drop their shoulders when even though fundamentally, it's wrong. But suddenly, you're able to stay in front of somebody better. Or when you close out to a shooter, no one chops their feet for 2 seconds before contesting a shot. It's just unrealistic. But if you pay attention to the best defenders in the world, what do they have in common? What is the one thing that ties them all together? It's either athleticism, length, or mentality, all of which are not skill-based whatsoever. All of the best defenders in the world are likely some of the most athletic players in the league. Try to name a great defender who's a mediocre athlete, you probably can't name more than a handful. The ratio heavily leans towards athletes. So it goes to show that conditioning workouts, staying in shape, and working on your athleticism correlates to you being a better defender. Add some killer mentality to where you want to play defense. That's also very important as well. And you have the entire package. It's not about working on that specific thing. It's not about working on defense itself. It's literally training your body to perform better. A good example of this is Stephen Curry. Now obviously Steph is not a great defender whatsoever, but he's gotten better. Early in his career, he was very small and less athletic. But once he hit the weight room in the right way and got stronger, he became a better defender, especially in the last few years. Even though he's 37 years old now, he's a better defender now than he was 10 years ago. And that's not because he was getting in the gym and started sliding up and down the court. He put the hours of strengthening his own body and performance to get to this point. Now, I'm not saying if you're not a great athlete, you can't be a great defender. It's still possible, but there's a reason why there are a ton of athletes that take on the defensive responsibility. If you take some of the best offensive players to ever play the game and some of the best defensive players to ever play the game, you'll likely see offensive players playing better defense than defensive players playing better offense. If you want any idea of what the defensive player's offense will look like, it would probably look like the 2025 Rockets. A ton of athletes and size with no spacing and not enough star talent. That Houston team, their offense primarily came through them getting on the glass for second chance points. That was not sustainable because Houston ended up being a bad half-court offense that year. Whereas the defense for the offensive players, as long as they're fully engaged, their preparation has been sharp, they're in shape, they're feeling strong, then they should be good to go. I saw a 2024 Olympics team that had Steph, Braun, KD, Book, and Embiid play championship level defense in the fourth quarter against Serbia. They trailed by 13 heading into the fourth, and they held Serbia to 0 for 10 from 3. They were 15 for 29 before the fourth quarter, and Serbia was 15 for 29 from 3 before the fourth quarter. And tell me right now, are any of those guys on Team USA elite defenders? No. It was a matter of mentality and effort, not anything skill-based. And if you flip it around and you ask a defensive lineup to try to replicate some championship level offense, they're not going to be able to replicate that same impact because playing offense is hard. I saw Draymond respond to KD about how the Warriors won championships because they were a defensive team, and he's partly right. Yes, the Warriors were a great defensive team and have always been. However, for how good the defense was, the offense was exponentially better. We're talking about the greatest shooting backcourt, or probably the greatest backcourt ever. And then you pair them up with the greatest scorer of all time, and they're the ones that are leading your offense. That's one of the greatest trios ever. That's one of the greatest offenses ever. But are we going to look at that team and say that they were one of the greatest defensive teams ever? No. Here's how I see it. Defense helps your team stay afloat. Offense takes you over the finish line. It's what gets you over the hump. It determines where you can go. Like going back to the 2025 Rockets, their defense helped them stay afloat as a team despite a lack of jump shooting and star talent. But they struggled to win games because their offense couldn't do more to finish the job. If they had a little bit more firepower in that series against the Warriors, they likely could have won. What defense does is provide stability. They function as paramedics. It keeps the game stable long enough for your offense, which is the medical team, to complete the job. And that's the point I'm trying to make in this video. It's not about needing one over the other. We don't want to extrapolate this conversation to that point. We gotta understand that both offense and defense, both of them acts as one hand washes the other. But however, with that being said, if we're being realistic, if we're being totally honest here, offense now should get a little bit more credit than defense. Just like how doctors would likely get more credit than paramedics in most situations. They're the ones in control, and it's the same with basketball. Defense keeps you in the game, offense will determine whether or not you win. I think the reason why the phrase defense wins championships has gotten so big is because back then, offense was much more simpler than it was now. So it wasn't a key thing to focus on. But now the game has changed. You have to be a competent offensive player to exist in the game today. If you can't, they either bench you or you're out of the league. You can no longer be a specialist in the modern game today because if you are, then they're going to leave you behind. It's that simple.